But my title of my talk this evening is Who Cares? You may say that's a very odd title for a presentation, but I think it's exceptionally relevant at this moment in time. So my friend, the convener at the show, who I'm still looking at rather than anybody else, um, can I ask you a question? Can you give me a count? I'm going to ask the audience one simple question or two simple questions. Number one, how many of you have ever been to Ben in its current location in St John's Wood, where we've been since 2002? So for the last 20 years, how many?
One, two, three, four, five. So six out of
Six.
the
Okay. How many have been to the Jewish Museum in Camden Town?
lot more. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
14. And genuinely, how many people are there in the room?
Say.
They're still arriving.
Still arriving. So there's about 50 people in the whole.
About 50 people. Okay. So I want to ask the next two questions, which is the same thing. How many people have been to Ben in the last or since COVID?
Since COVID. No one.
How many people have been to the Jewish Museum since COVID?
Two.
Okay. So the reason why I say who cares is part of the structure of this argument or discussion is about numbers. So let me ask the next question of your audience. How many people believe it's important to have a Jewish museum in London?
Pretty unanimous. Yeah.
Pretty unanimous. Okay. And how many people who know what Ben is, and not everybody will know, how many people think that it's important to have an art gallery that has as part of its major context the contribution of Jewish artists to British visual culture?
Yeah, that's pretty unanimous as well.
Okay, so let me tell you all the story, if I may. I got involved in Ben and became chairman when it was closed in October 2000. Okay, and part of the repositioning that we did to reopen it, because it closed essentially in 1995, was we took Ben out of the Jewish community and put it into the mainstream art museum community, where it represented the Jewish community rather than played or performed to the Jewish community. Does everybody get that distinction?
Yeah.
Okay. So a guy came up to me in Kenwood in around 2003. We moved here in 2002 and said to me, "You're David Glasser, aren't you?" So I said, "Yes." He says, I thought so. He says, "You've destroyed Ben-Uri." I said, "Oh, I've destroyed Ben-Uri." He said, "Yes." He said, it's no longer a Jewish art gallery. You're displaying non-Jewish artists and. So I said, well, it was closed for 6 years and now it's open again. So I'm not quite sure that we could be described as destroying it. Yes, you destroyed it. So I said, can I ask you a question? You have the advantage over me. You know who I am, but I don't know who you are. So I said, what is your name? So he told me. And I said, one of the early lessons I learned in my business life, my corporate business life, was to understand my income streams, to understand where the money is coming from, what are the products that sell fastest, etc. And then the charity sector, who is donating money. I said, and funnily enough, I don't recognize your name. When was the last time you gave any donations to Ben-Uri? He said, well, I haven't. So I said, well, on the basis that you didn't give to Ben-Uri before, and you tell me you're not going to give to Ben-Uri now, we're cash neutral. We haven't gained or lost. And the reason why I'm telling you that story is because either the community at large decides how to fund its Jewish cultural providers, if it really wants them, or it has to accept the struggles and as you probably all know, recently announced demise of the Jewish Museum London. Because it's all very well to say that we need it, we want it, but then neither visit it nor support it, because somebody else is going to do that. And that's why I titled my presentation today, Who Cares? Jewish Museum in London announced a month ago that it's going to be closing at the end of July for hopefully between 3 and 5 years, but maybe longer, and maybe forever. And the reason why it's closing is because it's financially unsustainable. It cannot raise sufficient funds to pay for its programming as it sees fit. Now, hopefully it will find a synagogue that it can move to in central London and be secure there. But it is astonishing, is it not, that in the sixth most richest country in the world, and a Jewish community that is small in numbers but nonetheless very secure, cannot support a Jewish museum. So when I say who cares, it's not that I'm complaining. Ben-Uri, we've also had our financial struggles. And in 2018, we made a strategic shift from the physical to the digital. But nonetheless, when we did that, people were outraged. What's happening? There's nothing to beat standing in front of the real thing, da, 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 da. But the bottom line is that nobody has actually come up with millions to actually put us into a more secure position, which is why, again, I ask, who cares? It's all very well caring, but we've got to actually, if we really care for it, we've got to do something about it. So this is not a crowdfunding exercise for the Jewish Museum or for Ben-Uri, but I just want to try to give you a different slant on the issue of Jewish cultural providers. If we want it, we have to pay for it. A bit like the National Health Service, a bit like Jewish Care, a bit like all the Jewish charities. If we want it, we have to ensure that it has the resources to survive. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about Ben-Uri. Okay. Ben-Uri was founded 108 years ago. I'm very pleased to say, although people often think that I look it, not by me. So I'm not 108 years old. I feel it sometimes, but I'm not 108 years old. It was founded by a Russian emigre artist who was born in Lithuania, went to Paris, painted in Paris, came to London. Came to London in the end of 1914, which was the end of the first year of the First World War. And basically said, no doubt in Yiddish, hi guys, yes, I'm Berson, yeah, I'm a painter, I'm an artist, where do I exhibit? Where do we Jews exhibit? And the women of the community turned around and said, of course, I don't know the actual words, but no doubt said, are you crazy? There's a war on. Nobody's exhibiting here, and all the men are at the front, or we're all working 20 hours a day, and we all live 4 to a room, at least. If you want to be an exhibiting artist, you have to go to the West End, not to Whitechapel. 2015, he raised enough support to found Ben-Uri Gallery as a Jewish art gallery of Jewish art, whatever Jewish art really means, but whatever it is, that's what he founded. With an aspiration, would you believe, this is in 1915, the second year of the First World War, that Ben-Uri could become a national museum of Jewish art in Britain. That's what you call aspirational. Okay. So I'm going to jump through to get through our history. We had our first gallery in 1925. Would you believe, opposite the British Museum? Great location. but it didn't work. It couldn't sustain itself. By the time the Second World War came, then it already was a situation where it obviously, like everybody else, it closed and didn't reopen again till 1944. All voluntary organizations are essentially run by volunteers. It's a straightforward equation, okay? The continental Jews, those Jews who arrived from Central Europe, they were looking not for religious inspiration, but looking for cultural inspiration. In Germany, in Austria, particularly in Poland, less so, but more so in different ways, they were cultural Jews. They had assimilated to the point where they felt very happy to be Jewish, but their Jewishness was related through cultural activities rather than religious activities. So when they came to London, they went searching for the Jewish cultural institutions. And there weren't many except Ben-Uri. So by the time 1950 came, the continental Jews, the immigrants from Europe, those who escaped or survived, really started to run Ben-Uri. And they changed the format of Ben-Uri from being an art gallery to a cultural center. So everybody says that we laugh when JW3 was announced. The Jewish Community Center was the first Jewish community center, in London. Ben-Uri was the first Jewish community center and cultural center in the early 1950s, because Ben-Uri had its own orchestra, its own theatre group, its own literary society, music society, no doubt bridge club, you name it, Ben-Uri had it. So, of course, it took its eye off the ball in terms of art, but it widened its scope to envelope a whole range of other cultural activities. You may wonder whether the Ben-Uri Orchestra was not a bunch of amateur musicians. Well, I can tell you actually that it wasn't. It was a very professional outfit that was conducted by Yehudi Menuhin at the Wigmore Hall on a number of occasions. So it really was of serious quality. By the time the 1970s and 80s came, there was a metamorphic change in British society. As those of you who are of my age group will remember, just that in the 1960s and 70s, we couldn't join golf clubs. Accountants and lawyers didn't become senior partners of city law firms. But by the time the 1980s came, these glass ceilings started to disappear. And there was no obstacles to Jews progressing to the highest levels across all the different professions. That also meant that Jews who were the trustees and stalwarts of Jewish cultural societies and Jewish charities could also join national institutions. So many Jews started to populate, trusteeships in the National Gallery, Tate, the Royal Opera House, you name it, it was available. In many ways, Ben-Uri simply didn't notice the change, even though it lost a number of trustees to the Nationals. Because Ben-Uri's function in life up to then was to create, if you like, a safe house, an environment for Jewish artists to be able to exhibit their work, irrespective of any obvious or undercurrent of anti-Semitism, of racism, or whatever you want to describe it. So Ben-Uri continued on that basis to be a Jewish art society for Jewish artists. I thought it was called Ben-Uri Art Society through the 80s, when actually Jewish artists no longer were terribly interested in exhibiting at Ben-Uri if they had the alternative of exhibiting with major galleries, yes, who were going to represent them, and national galleries. Therefore, what happened is that Ben Uri became, if you like, a lovely, warm-hearted home for Jewish artists who did not necessarily enjoy the external success that they may well have deserved. Okay. That is a formula for decline. Imagine going to a store, yes, whatever favorite store you have, yes, and not finding the products that you want. You don't go back. So the products that people wanted were the major artists, the important artists. So the Tate, the National Gallery, National Portrait Gallery, Hayward, the Barbican, whatever it is, they were exhibiting. And everybody's only got a certain amount of time. So unless they happened to know the artist that Ben Uri was exhibiting, there was no reason to go. And as I say, that was the trigger for the final elements of decline. Ben Uri was housed, if you remember, in the 4th floor of the great synagogue in Dean Street in Soho. As London developed and suburban communities evolved and grew, central London communities in the Soho area declined, and the synagogue had great troubles to even get a minyan, and therefore the United Synagogue sold the building. Ben Uri was on the 4th floor. I always say that it was very good in these days. I didn't go so often because it wasn't of any great interest to me either. But when I did go, I always was grateful that it was in a shul, because you had to go up in the lift 4 floors, and it was a very rickety old lift. And then coming down, I also prayed that it went down slowly and not fast, because it was on the 4th floor. So happy and grateful that it was in a shul. But Ben Uri essentially then moved for 5 or 6 years from an office to another office, and ended up being generously housed, this time by the Reform Synagogue movement in East Finchley, in the Sternberg Centre, rather than necessarily in the United Synagogue. Okay. So there we are, 2000, we've got a situation where the Ben Uri is, the collection's in store. There is an office in East Finchley. Anybody who knows East Finchley knows that it's as convenient to the West End as Leytonstone is. That's just a reality of geography. But it also is a gated community, so people can't just walk in. And there was no permanent exhibition space at all. So it relied on short-term temporary exhibitions, but then very difficult because the building was a listed building, so you couldn't knock a nail into the wall, which makes hanging paintings quite challenging. Okay. So then the question was, what happens to Ben Uri? Who cares about what happens to Ben Uri? Nobody clearly cared enough in the community, because 5 years after it closed, the collection was still in store, and Ben Uri had an office in the Sternberg Centre in East Finchley, which is not necessarily the ideal location for an art gallery. When a number of us looked at the collection afresh, we saw the collection differently. We did not see it as a collection of, or the biggest collection of Anglo-Jewish artists in the country. After all, who would have a bigger collection of Anglo-Jewish artists in the country apart from Ben Uri? We saw the collection as a collection by immigrant artists who happened to be Jewish. Now, imagine we're in 1999. We're 1 year away from the millennium. And we were still in the European Union, and we still had free movement of labor. What was the greatest social challenge that was going to face our country and all rich Western democracies in the new millennium with freedom of movement of labor? It was social integration. It was how we actually absorb immigrants into our country and our society. And here in store was 1,000 works, principally by immigrant Jewish artists. If you put the two together and you transform and converse the actual appeal, then we have a collection of immigrant artists, brackets, who were Jewish, brackets, which tells the story of a successful social integration into this country. So we saw the future of Ben Uri, not because if we were going to try to resurrect it, there was no point in resurrecting it in exactly the same formula as before, because it failed before. It was not successful. Nobody supported it. Yes. So you don't keep playing the same tune the whole time if nobody's interested in the tune. But if we turned it round and widened its marketplace, then the Jewish immigrant artists would have a very important part and context within a wider immigrant story. And that's what we set out to do. So in 2001, we had an exhibition called The Ben Uri Story, From Art Society to Museum, laying the foundation that we were no longer going to be a Jewish community art society, but we're going to be an international museum and operate to their standards. And in 2002, we rented this current gallery space in St. John's Wood on a temporary basis, because I thought that we would be able to raise 30 million or 20 million or whatever, how many tens of millions, to essentially build a proper institution, probably in the East End, next to the Whitechapel Gallery, going back to our roots, where actually we could share the immigrant story amongst other immigrant communities and attract a wide audience rather than a narrow and frankly disinterested audience, which goes back to who cares. Okay? Right. 22 years later, or 20 years later, we're still in this gallery. So we failed. We succeeded in raising our profile and our reputation as an international museum, but we failed to raise the 20 or 30 million that we needed to actually buy and convert a proper size building in a proper location, because we knew that location is key. If you're not in a position to attract and to be able to capture A, passing traffic, and B, traffic that is going to the major museums, the nationals, then you have very little chance of success. The Jewish Museum has learned that to its cost. We understood that, so we didn't make that mistake. But we're still in this small, relatively unsustainable gallery in Boundary Road in St. John's Wood. In 2015, we had our centenary exhibition at Somerset House. It was a make or break exhibition. The Heritage Lottery Fund, not the Jewish community, the Heritage Lottery Fund funded the exhibition to the tune of £400,000. It was the most successful exhibition that had ever been held at Somerset House. But Ben Uri could only raise 30-odd thousand pounds from the community in support of this exhibition. Who cares? I asked myself. After it was finished, the board realized that actually we'd spent 15 years trying to raise 20, 30 million to find a proper building in the right location that was sustainable for our vision of a museum of art, identity, and migration. And we'd failed. And how long do we continue, yes, to run up a hill and stop 3/4 way up or halfway up and then fall down? So we had what's called an options analysis. It's what we all do when we've got a problem. You do it at home. You discuss with your family, how do we deal with this? What are the options? Which decision do we make? And in 2016 and 17, we agreed a merger with the University of East Anglia in Norwich. and where we would become part of the very famous Sainsbury's Centre for the Visual Arts, which is an amazing space. They have a collection that's worth £2 to £3 billion. It was tremendous. Unfortunately, after 18 months of detailed negotiations and contracts signed and exchanged, Lord Sainsbury had not been informed properly. And he, as we're being recording this, I have to be careful what I say. He disagreed. Let me put it that way. He disagreed. And on the basis that that the university were hoping that Lord Sainsbury would look favorably, continue to look favorably on them, they withdrew, and we were left high and dry. We then went back to the drawing board and chose our second option, which was to go digital. Now, I want to now see whether I can change the habits of a lifetime and to show you a film. I'm not sure whether this will work, but I'm going to try, okay, which explains why we made that decision. So please bear with me. I've got no idea whether I can do this or not, but I'm going to have a crack. Am I sharing if I can anybody see this or not? Can anybody see this?
You can hear it, we can't see it. We can't.
I don't know how to. Does anybody know? Can anybody guide me?
It's on Zoom. Yeah. You're on share screen on Zoom?
You need to share screen first.
Hold on a second.
So it's at the
Sorry, everybody, about this. Okay, so now I seem to have lost us completely.
So go to back to Zoom and then share screen.
yeah, so you need to be on Zoom and then put your cursor towards the bottom and a bar will come up and it should have share screen on it. That's it.
And then go.
Yes.
Yeah, and then go, then now play your video. That's it.
Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
Get into the lobby.
And then go full screen on it.
Ah, sorry, wrong one. Sorry about that. That's it.
My name is David Glasser, and I'm the chairman of the Ben-Uri Gallery Museum in London, Britain's first full-scale virtual museum and research centres. I want to tell you a story, our story, a tale of two cities, if you like. The first here, Boundary Road in northwest London, a street in a leafy suburb, 2 floors, 1,500 square feet, 25,000 square feet too small. This is not a sustainable future. We cannot deliver the potential that Ben-Uri has, and we were not able to achieve that physically. It's very difficult to generate visitor traffic here when we have all the national galleries in central London. They are our competition. You may wonder why we're standing here on the Millennium Bridge, because this Millennium Bridge and Tate are two factors that reflect Ben-Uri's history and our future. The relevances are twofold. First of all, Tate was founded only 18 years before Ben-Uri, but under different circumstances. Ben-Uri in the East End of London, in Whitechapel, in the Jewish ghetto in 1915. And yet 100 years later, we produced this book, one of 50 that we produced in the last 20 years, to celebrate our centenary, Ben-Uri 100 years in London. Tate's budget for acquisitions is 18 million. Ben-Uri's budget for acquisitions was 30,000, and that in itself is extremely high given the size and scope of our institution. The context of museums became clear. We had no guarantee of a future that was secure in our current status as a small institution, not just competing with Tate for finance, but also competing for visitor and press attention. Tate, the National Gallery, the British Museum, all our great national museums, which makes London the cultural centre of the world, are simply not reflective of the British museum sector. 82% of the 3,500 museums in this country are considered to be small and medium sized. We believe that around half of British museums actually have less than 5,000 visitors per annum. That's 100 visitors a week. And this was exactly the problem that faced Ben Uri. And in 2018, we published our sustainability and public benefit strategy. And the answer was not to try to replicate Tate, but to actually become a digital institution with a physical presence. We've exchanged concrete walls for the unlimited potential of the internet. We don't have a major building capital development to either fund or maintain. The opportunity that digital engagement offers allows museums to communicate, to engage, to disseminate their stories across a global and unrestricted audience. Our purpose is threefold. Number one, the Ben Uri Research Unit, which records the contribution of the Jewish and immigrant communities to British visual arts since 1900. Number two, the Ben Uri Arts and Health Institute. We are redefining, evaluating and researching exactly what makes an art intervention work. Last but not least, the collection, which we've grown substantially over the past 20 years with international works of outstanding museum world-class stature. They are now our signature works. 11,000 pages of archive for those people who are interested in our history and the history of this great city of London and its arts development. 40 different exhibitions at any one time, 100 films, 60 podcasts, 200 different school programs, 100 different programs for the elderly who are living in either social isolation or with dementia. It's this combination that makes a virtual museum so compelling for Ben Uri. It allows us to fulfill our potential. Looking at 2040, 2050, we will be in a fully digitized world. And museums have to be at the forefront of that revolution. That's what makes Ben Uri special. That is our potential. To be in a situation where we add public benefit. There is a reason for Ben Uri being there. And if it wasn't there, it would be sorely missed. That surely is the definition of a museum in the 21st century.
Okay. Yeah, I've got one more film to show you all, but not yet. Okay. Are you still all with me, or have I put you to sleep or boredom or whatever?
We're still with you. We can't see you though.
Okay. Don't know how to, right. I don't know how to do this.
Go back to Zoom. And then I think you press the share again. It's got a little cross. Ooh.
Or maybe I put stop share.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds good. That's it.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Yeah, that's fine. So we're gonna, I think maybe David, no, maybe 10 minutes and then a little bit of time for questions.
That's absolutely fine. Because
yeah.
Okay. All right. So I don't know whether you can see me. I can't see you all, but that's fine. So that was the setup. That's what we created in 2018, and we launched it. To give you a measure, Ben Uri struggles to get 15 visitors a week. That's the bottom line. Okay. Digitally, we're connecting with something like 12,000 people a week. Our website is connecting in terms of pages. I think it's around 6,500 pages a week. Now, our analysis is that it does not matter whether our visitor is from Halifax, Yorkshire, or Halifax, Nova Scotia, because what we're doing is disseminating the stories of the Jewish and immigrant contribution to British art. And by widening the landscape to include the Nigerian contribution, to the Sudanese contribution, the Indian contribution, all the different countries in the world, we are gaining audiences who will also witness the Jewish contribution. So, for example, if you take the geographical breakdown of our audiences, and we have huge databases on this, 1/3 of our visitors to the websites are from London. Remember, you're in London, but so is Boreham Wood in London. So is Streatham in London. London is a huge city. So 90% of that third is all extra business. It's all extra visitors because they're not in our local domain. 1/3 of our total visitors come from the rest of the UK. And 1/3 comes from abroad. So it is perfectly logical to argue that 90% plus of all our digital visitors are new to Ben Uri. And we gain between 80 and 90% of new visitors every week. Because if you sign up to Ben Uri online, you will actually get a weekly newsletter that tells you what the features are every week. Now, that's not to say that we've forgotten our physical presence. So I want to show you one last film, and then I'm happy to answer any questions, no matter how difficult, challenging that you want. I'm happy to answer them all. But I want to show you a film that we made in January of this year when we were invited to be the museum partner of the London Art Fair, which, by the way, we would never have been invited to be the museum partner of the London Art Fair if we were solely interested and focused on the Jewish artists. Not that anybody would be against that, but it would not have the wide appeal that is required to be in a national and international art fair, where 25,000 people visited our exhibition in a week. Actually, it was in 5 days. So I'd like to just show you the impact that combining the wide immigrant contribution with the Jewish contribution, because it's all one and the same package, yes, has on visitors. Okay, so I'm going to try again. So I've got to just remind me, please, I've got to share the screen.
Yep. So go to the bottom and press share.
Okay.
That's it. We can see you.
Now do I just go back online? Yep. To, okay. Sorry about this, folks. As you can see, I'm not as good as I'd like to be on this. How do I go away all this stuff? Okay, let's try something else.
That was on that one. Was it time to use Mozilla? Okay.
So I'm going on to this is the Ben Uri site. Okay, so you can just see what it is. Here's all our departments. What's on about Ben Uri exhibitions? We've got 50 exhibitions online. Research unit, 600 profiles. Museum partnership, essays, Ben Uri TV, BU TV. Come on. We're in business, hopefully. Ben Uri engages 25,000 visitors as an official museum partner of the London Art Fair 2023. Can you see it? Yes?
I'm David Glasser. I'm the chairman of the Ben Uri Gallery and Museum, and I'm standing in front of the Ben Uri stand at the London Art Fair 2023 in the Business Design Centre in Islington. It's an annual fair, and it has one museum partner a year, and we're incredibly honoured that this year is Ben Uri. And what better time for it to be Ben Uri in our time of crisis across Europe? Ben Uri focuses on the Jewish and the immigrant contribution to British visual culture since 1900. And Ben Uri has the finest collection, the largest collection by immigrant artists in the country. We have 1,000 works near enough in the collection by some 400 artists from 45 different countries of birth. 29% of these artists are women, compared to 3% nationally.
I really like this Mark Gertler, a Hampstead artist, or he had a studio in Well Road, I think it was.
This is a fantastic monumental work by the artist Alfred Wallmark. He once said that Rembrandt was the only artist who ever influenced him, and we see that here in the scale and ambition of this piece.
The spread of artists reflects the spread of immigration to this country. And this exhibition and this whole museum's function is to actually disseminate the stories of these artists, because the reasons for migration are always different. But the experience, once you land here, they are so similar. Different country, different culture, different language, a different culinary menu, different schooling. Everything is different. And people land here and have to face that transition. And that's what Ben Uri is about.
So I've come down for the art fair and utterly blown away by this group of work. How in maybe 15, 20 art pieces, so much is said, connections made between new work and back to First World War era, the beginning of the 20th century. And in an art fair where there's little social engagement, this seems full of social engagement and quality art. And I'm blown away by it. Really moved.
I really like this picture of the circus with the ponies with the plumes. It's very lively and the ponies look very Farewellian and naughty.
This is a joyous painting, and actually it features in our exhibition at the gallery called Joy. It's a lighter palette than his earlier work, but it's still nonetheless heavy in pastel.
This is a head of Romilly John, the 2-year-old son of Augustus John, a fellow artist and friend of Jacob Epstein, the sculptor, who made it in 1907. You see here the lovely chubby cheeks of the little baby, and that's been combined with this semi-abstract helmet of hair.
She's a very strong character, that lady. I love the colours, but she's a very stern lady. I don't think I'd like her on my wall.
Isaac Rosenberg, the wee drawing, I know his poetry and I knew he was an artist, but I'd never seen drawing. And to actually see it on this disintegrating brown paper, so presumably sent from the front.
I like the colours and the simplicity of it, but the eyes are very anxious making, aren't they? You feel there's something very lost about the character.
So when you actually see this work, you see that it's draftsmanship, but not with a pencil, but with a brush. So it's stroke here, stroke there, which creates the frame.
It's the first I've heard of it, and I am so pleased to have discovered it. It's just a revelation. The works of art are mind-blowing. I think it's a mind-blowing exhibition because of the different way in which the artists deal with these topics and how personal they are and sometimes impersonal. It's almost like being punched in the gut coming to see these. It is stunning, absolutely stunning.
Okay. I'm not sure if I've turned us off. Have I turned us off?
No, just do stop share.
Okay, 1 second. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing
That's it.
stop share, yes, sorry. So that's the other side of Ben-Uri is the physical side, and we tour our exhibitions. We are in 7 different European countries and the United States this year. So a completely different philosophy about how we present our work. The Jewish content and Jewish context is, of course, incredibly important to us. It's in our DNA, but so is migration and immigration in our DNA. And that's what we balance and we project. So that's the Ben-Uri story, my friends. All I can say to you is, who cares? Because if you don't care enough to make the visits or make the effort to actually either come physically or to go online to benuri.org and enjoy it, then these things wither. Institutions wither. Institutions are no different to trees or plants. They need tender, loving care. They need watering. They need care and support. And the amount of work that people do in these institutions for the wide public benefit or the narrow Jewish public benefit is huge. But we're not very good at supporting our own. And that's why I leave you, at least for my presentation, to say, who cares? And please care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
I'm just gonna turn David round so he can see the audience. No one's left.
I could turn around.
Just let me get on the mic.
I could turn around.
Okay. So yeah, just a formal thank you to David. I know there's maybe some people got here late and they're expecting to see Monica Duchen. Unfortunately, Monica got in touch with us at 11:30 this morning to say she was very poorly, very ill. She'd been very ill overnight and she couldn't make the talk. We all, of course, wish her well. But David stepped in literally with an hour's notice to do this talk over Zoom. He's not in London, so a really big thank you to David Glasser for the talk. Very, very much appreciated. And I think, the talk was raised, well, all I can say, David, is I really feel your pain. I don't know if you know the story of Leytonstone Synagogue. In 2016, I think that maybe the dates are coincidental, but in 2016, there was probably 3 people coming here once a month. And we asked the same question, who cares? Does the Jewish community care? And we couldn't go digital. Being an Orthodox synagogue, we can't go digital. People actually have to come here to do Jewish stuff. So we didn't have that option. We had the option of simply trying to promote the synagogue and trying to get people in. And with a lot of dedicated volunteers, I know similar to the dedicated volunteers you may have in art galleries, we promoted the synagogue and now we have services every Shabbat here. We have services and we do lots of events and Friday night meals and the Leytonstone Arts Trail. So it does it. I think to give you some hope, people do care. If it's worth it, then people do care. If you tell them and you explain to them what the benefits are and why they should care, they do care. So I'm just going to throw it open to the audience because for me it's raised so many questions. So I've got a question. Let me just, I don't know if you can see Carol at the back. Carol, do you want to?
You can see me. I'm big
enough. I'm just going to hand it over to Carol. She can speak loudly, so you'll hear her.
Hello, Carol.
Hi, I've been to the Jewish Museum quite a few times at Camden. I've been to the Ben-Uri a couple of times, not as many really as I should have or would have liked to have done. I've been online as well, but I wondered whether there's any way schools programs could be set up.
Anyway,
schools programs could be set up in terms of education, so combining it with education of the Jewish community, but also with our art and culture, which is really important. Same with other immigrant nations, and people. I know a lot is done in Tower Hamlets, because you mentioned Tower Hamlets, which is where I'm originally from. You mentioned, the different communities that live there and the Whitechapel Gallery, and they, the Asian community there celebrate loads of things, from all the stuff around the rag trade to the docks, the curry houses, everything. There's art around everywhere, and I wondered whether we should be doing something similar.
Well, when you say we should be doing something similar, I'm not quite sure whether you mean Ben-Uri should be doing something, or the Jewish Museum should be doing something, or Leytonstone should be doing something. But I can only speak for Ben-Uri. Sorry, go on. Yes?
All of us, individually and collectively, should be doing something.
Well,
It's easy to let other people do things.
no, well, that's absolutely correct. So the answer is it's horses for courses. So you've been to Ben-Uri, you know how small we are. It's very difficult to persuade a school to bring a class of 30 children to Ben-Uri, which would just literally clog up the whole ground floor, when they can go to Tate on the National Gallery. So because we happen to be 3 miles out of the centre of London, yeah, we're not the natural choice. That's number one. Let me finish, Carol, then you can come back. The second thing is that there's only a limited amount of resources. Okay, so we have to invest our resources where we get the greatest return in terms of public benefit. Because we're so close to the centre of London, spending a huge amount of money, and it does cost a huge amount of money, on schools programs which are offered by the other major museums actually adds very little but costs a great deal. So we don't actually see ourselves as a, inverted commas, local community museum, because actually there is no demand or necessarily need for it. What we see as ourselves is as an academic institution, yes, with a collection and with an exhibition policy. So we invest the money that we used to spend on children's education into adult education through our research unit. That's how we've evaluated where we get the greatest return of public benefit. Carol, back to you.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, you know, you've got an audience here of about 40 people and classrooms are about 30 kids. So, you know, take it into the classroom, not the classroom come to you. You've got the technology now to bring things in and to have children ask questions, and that's how they learn. They go back and they talk to people, and some of those people might be parents who could contribute in many ways. And I think sometimes we sort of lose sight of just the basic, simple stuff. Art is for everybody. Art is about sharing who we are, how we live, what we do. And we can do that in the simplest way. This is a small shop. We have an exhibition. You know, it might be once a year, but it can grow. Things grow. It's around everywhere. In house windows around Leytonstone, the art trail exists because people put their art in their homes, in their windows, and everyone sees it and enjoys it. So I think we sometimes need to look at things from a different perspective.
Thanks. Sorry, David, because there's a few people that want to ask questions. Maybe come back. If you want to come back later, but I'm going to hand. Ruth wants to ask a question. So yeah, go around so you can see.
Hi, can you see me? Can you hear me?
No, but I'd like to.
Hi.
Hello, Ruth.
I was the one liaising with Monica, and I really wanted to hear this talk today about the contribution of, it doesn't say Jewish artists in the talk title, but refugees from Nazi Germany, Nazi Europe coming here, and what their contributions were to British visual art. I just wanted to say there are a lot of people here who are artists. There's at least one person I know of who is about to go and study art. When I was at art school in the 90s, I did hear about the Ben-Uri Gallery, and I went because I wanted to see, I went after art school, it must have been when it opened at St. John's Wood. I went to see the David Bombergs. I didn't know David Bomberg was a Jewish artist until until when I went, like, where do I go and see these paintings? Somebody said, I'll go to the Ben-Uri Gallery. And I certainly didn't know, as a young artist out of art school getting started, that that was it. That was the Jewish gallery, the Jewish art gallery for the UK, and how that contrasts with what other countries have, especially the United States. I think that message, not just that all the sort of discussions and educating school children about what the contribution is, just even the fact that we have just this and the sheer wealth of the collection that it has, that is the message that I think would really, to sort of bring the Ben-Uri Gallery up to the same level as places like the Tate and National Gallery. and stop Jewish art students being sent to look at the Christian art. So it's not a question, it's just a comment.
Okay. Thank you.
So we got another one, thick and fast, from our friend Jakob Kora. I'm just going to hand in the mic.
I just want to put an idea to you, which kind of I was thinking about a long time, that the rabbi of the shul used to be the rabbi of Nelson Street Synagogue. Now that building, I don't know who it belongs to, but the roof basically collapsed there. You've got a synagogue there, right in the heart of the east end of London. And maybe I could put it to you that maybe includes a space which you could use, or the Jewish Museum could use, and and it's very, very much part of the Jewish immigration experience, and and I think it'd be a very, very great asset to that area. Just an idea.
Great one. Great one listed.
Okay, well, I can just help you on that. It's a very complex legal situation there. The without going into highly boring detail, but it's been let to people where in retrospect a lot of people think it was a mistake, but there is a legal issue in terms of how to change it. I've got to be just careful with my words, otherwise I'll probably get sued. But it's not as simple as, well, the keys are hanging there, yes, and to go. So you're right. It's a natural location for a Jewish institution. 1 second, sir. The only thing I would say is, as far as Ben-Uri is concerned, we are no longer looking to create a large museum of art identity migration. We are very comfortable with our new strategic positioning, where we are digital first, because that's how we actually impact and engage the most amount of visitors, which is our function. But for the Jewish Museum, it may well be a natural, but I think it might be too small. But I hear you, and I understand the point, sir.
David.
I'm David.
Me too.
I lived in Manchester for quite a year. I lived in Manchester for about 10 years, and I and a friend tried to form an artists like a group that would make exhibits in Manchester in those days. We didn't actually get very far with it, but there were probably about 10 artists there, who were Jewish artists. And I came down here and I found similar sort of Jewish artists, both in Leytonstone and also in Stamford Hill and elsewhere. I've actually never heard of the Uri, what's it called now?
Uri Gallery.
I actually not heard it until this whole thing was being arranged. And I think there are a lot of Orthodox Jewish artists around that might well be interested in contributing to what you're doing, both in terms of exhibits and finances. So I don't know if you actually, whether it's been put into the Jewish newspapers or like the Jewish Tribune or I can't know his name. But
So David, let me be absolutely clear for you and everybody. Pre-1995, when it closed, the passport into Ben-Uri was that you were Jewish. Post-2002 on reopening, that is not the passport anymore. We have a proud Jewish heritage, which we're incredibly proud and connected to, but there's no passport at all to either exhibitions or collections, the fact that you're Jewish. It's a different, it's a quality equivalent and quality standard and distinctive standard that we're interested in now. So we're neither pro or against Jewish artists, because we no longer classify our artists as whether they're Jewish or not. We classify our artists principally as to whether they're actually immigrants to this country, and then the quality of the art. So we're no longer within the narrow confines of the community, principally because the community never supported Ben-Uri, yes, in all the years that it existed when it was inside the community. So any artist who was not born in this country, yes, who wishes to apply is very welcome. Artists who were born in this country actually really have to go somewhere else, because that's not our focus anymore. Our focus is on the Jewish and and immigrant contribution to British visual culture since 1900. So I could say it's a shame in many ways, but the community has never, just as you found in Manchester, it's no different in London. There is not the appetite to support properly, yes, a museum quality standard community organization. Every individual school, there's no reason why individual schools should not have an art section within their menu of activities, and that would be wonderful. But as far as Ben Uri Museum is concerned, our context and our barriers to entry are higher.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, we have one last, so this is going to be the last question. Last question from Daniel.
You have as many questions as you like. I've got.
Our time is limited, so this will be the last one.
May I ask, how do you get your income stream?
Yes, you can indeed. And my answer is with difficulty. We get our income streams through grants, mainstream grants, donations from within and outside the community. We are just about to launch a major sponsorship of our website, which we've been building for the last 4 or 5 years, so that individual galleries or companies can actually sponsor. So Louis Vuitton is very welcome to sponsor our, women artist department. I don't know. I mean, but it's basically through patronage, sponsorship, and grants and donations.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, very, very much. We're going to have a little break now. I mean, we could go on, but time is pressing on. We're going to have a little break, and we're going to reconvene, and it's a chance to meet the artists in our show. So we're going to have a little stroll round, and we're going to invite the artists to say whatever they would like about their work. So yes, go on.
May I just thank you all very much indeed for spending your time listening to me, and B, to say to you that it really is worthwhile to go on to benuri.org. You will see the first full-scale virtual museum and research centre. And physically, we're open Wednesdays to Fridays. This is a plug, of course, but that's okay. Our next exhibition, our current exhibition is Holocaust by Peter Housen, who's a Scottish artist from 2011. The next exhibition is the other part of that. It's the Nuremberg Trials, 2 major drawings by Dame Laura Knight, which if you've ever been to the Imperial War Museum, you will have seen the major picture. And then in September, the exhibition of the year is called Sheer Verve, which is about the International Women's Art Club, which was founded in 1898 in Paris and then moved to London in 1900 and kept going for 75 years. So please either join us digitally or come and see us physically, and we'll be delighted to see you. If you want any other questions, just email me and I'm happy to answer everything. Okay?
Thank you, David. Thank you very much.
Okay, have a wonderful day.